Hey guys, this is Lawrence from iWood Cosplay, and today I have a special guest, Evil Ted.
Hey guys, how you doing? Lawrence, thank you so much for having me on your show.
Oh my gosh, I'm honored to have you here. And for you guys that don't know, you want to tell them a little bit about yourself?
Hi guys, my name is Evil Ted. I have a YouTube channel called the Evil Ted channel, and Lawrence and I have the obsession with making things out of craft foam. I work in the movie industry for like 30 years making costumes and props for film and television, and I like doing stuff out of foam. But when I discovered the world of cosplay, kids were out there doing stuff with hot glue, and I was like, wait a minute, no, there's other ways of doing things with contact cement and heat guns. And so I made some videos, it really took off. So I want to thank the community, so bringing the fun back for me, because movie industry is a lot of exciting work, but it's a lot of work. And sometimes it works so hard and crazy, it loses the fun, and cosplay brought the fun back.
Hey, so. There you go. This is the guy that taught me all the craft foam stuff, so if you guys really want to check out the foam basics, this is the guy.
Oh, thank you so much. And I recently discovered Lawrence and been watching him himself. My youngest is a huge Hero Academia fan and wanted to be a Deku. And I was like, oh, okay, Dick. And I started searching and I found these amazing patterns. I was like, who's this Lawrence iWood guy? And he got some great patterns. So I bought the shoe patterns, I bought the mask pattern, and I was making them as I watched the videos on it too. And I was like, it's really comprehensible, they're really put together. And so when I made the video, I gave him a huge shout out and said, hey guys, like, I have these amazing patterns from Lawrence, and if you guys are big fans of Hero Academia, go to his site, and he has tons of other characters. And so I love the fact that I didn't have to make it. I just went, and that's the cool thing with my shop and my store on my website, eviltedsmith.com. I have patterns. I want to get people to get patterns and build something, but take that pattern and explore and do something different with it, or take a basis of a helmet and add more to it, and just when he already had the shoes and the mask, I love the fact that I didn't have to think about it. I just got it, built it. So thank you, Lawrence.
Yeah, of course.
And it's great. I'm so glad you have a great dedicated fan base. It's nice. And that's one thing about cosplay and the community that Lawrence and I both really appreciate, is it's a friendly community. There's no competition here. It's about sharing knowledge. And the idea that he learned something from me but wants to teach it to you, that's great. And I don't mind, some people always feel like, you know, getting credit for something. And I think once they put it out in the universe, what happens to that beyond that point, I don't care anymore. It's like I don't really need to get credit for it. I'm just glad that people are building and making stuff.
That's super awesome. Like this guy. You guys give him a follow if you guys haven't already. And I agree with you on that concept, because I remember coming from the community where it was everyone had their trade secrets. It was so hard to learn. It was so ridiculous. Yeah. And I found out through fellow cosplayers that when they came to me, they're like, "You're so cool because you share techniques." I'm like, doesn't everybody? And they're like, no. And ready for this? I'm so happy to say that that's almost next to none now. It's very rare. In the beginning was this real kind of struggle of like, oh, if somebody takes my technique, I'm like, you know, what are you gaining from hiding your secrets? It's like, I feel that if you learn something, you pass it on, somebody will take your technique and do something even better with it, and it comes back to you. And I've had people take things like, hey Ted, did you know? I'm like, no, I didn't. That's great. Thanks for sharing. So if you throw it out in the universe, you will get it back even better. Like there'll be something you learned that you didn't know existed. So I agree with that so much, and that's why you guys are watching. Before we go into the Instagram questions, let's talk about some foam basics. I think the cosplay community has shifted towards EVA foam, where we had come from Warbler, which is thermoplastic. So that's what this video is about. This is the foam basics video. Right. Do you want to explain some foam materials first, and then we can move on?
Foam basic is I've never seen anything made out of Warbler I couldn't do out of foam. And it's what people are used to working with. I have friends that work with plastics, some people work with leather, and when I go to introduce foam, they freak out, like, this is soft, or this is not stiff. Like, it's just a bit of a learning curve feeling the material, but you will, all those techniques that work with plastics and leather work or pattern making with fabrics, it's all the same thing. Just a new material, but all the concepts it's just the same thing. Foam basics for me is cutting, sharp blades, rotary tools, grinding, the bits you use, heating, heat curling, heat shaping. These are all just real basic things with foam. And also a good cutting mat and a metal straight edge.
Oh yes, like not the aluminum one.
No.
Because the blade would cut right through it.
Yeah, it'll cut into it, and then once you kind of niche in it, it's always there and it doesn't go away. Yes. Or plastic, you have to use a metal.
So you get the steel ruler. So thank you, Ted.
Go ahead.
So my basics with craft foam was, most people are confused with craft foam and EVA foam. Ooh. They're the same, no?
Yes, it's EVA foam. There's a definition for it. I looked up one time. It's the chemicals that use to make the foam, but it's craft foam and EVA foam are basically the same thing. It's at different densities. Sometimes you can go to like the Michaels or Hobby Lobbies and you buy the small sheets. They're like about 5 millimeters. It's really stiff. Mm-hmm. That's still EVA foam. It's just denser. And sometimes I like that stuff because you can cut strips and heat it and shape it. And that's good stuff, but it's basically the same thing.
It's the same thing. It's kind of like Kleenex. It's just tissue.
Right, and people always ask me the difference between floor mat foam and EVA foam they buy from a supplier like TNT, or what's the other company that sells?
Cosplay Crafts?
Cosplay Crafts. There's places in Europe that sell it.
Polyprops?
Polyprops that sell EVA foam. And the difference between those foams is the quality. When you buy cheap floor mat foam, you'll find that the foam has a lot of bubbles in it because they're not making it for quality, they're making it for comfort on a floor.
Yeah.
So there's texture on one side and there's sometimes pitting and big bubbles and air holes in it. When you buy sheet EVA foam, smooth on both sides, it's higher quality foam that it's denser and there's less imperfections in it. So that's the big difference between both those.
Yeah, so actually you have an example right here.
Yes.
So this is the texture Ted was talking about.
Right.
You can get these, they're really cheap and you can get them at a Harbor Freight or something.
Oh, Harbor Freight, super cheap. The one thing that people forget about this, when you're crafting with this stuff, people, and you have the texture side, if you're gonna glue straps or glue something to it, you gotta get this surface off. You gotta grind it because it's a factory sealed, so it heat sealed it to put the impression on there. So what happens is the glue doesn't soak into the foam, it just pulls on the surface and more likely things are gonna pull off. So if you're gluing or strapping, make sure you break that surface with a rotary tool or sanding drum. I know Punish Props is a thing where they score it and put slots in it and heat it up. But you wanna break that surface so it grabs. So that's one thing about it. If you're new to cosplay and wanna make armor, and you're gonna do the smooth side on the front, and hide the straps in the back, but make sure you break that surface.
That's a good tip, actually. That's something I had to learn the hard way.
Right, because you're at a con, you're like, yeah, with your friends, all of a sudden pop. You're like, wait, what happened? You look, it just comes. I've had hot glue pop off. I had barge cement pop off. It's like,
there you go.
It's this stuff, you have to really break it up, so there you go. Basics.
Yeah. And but then either way, so this one's good. It's one thing I hate about, one thing I really do not enjoy about foam, working with foam, is like the sanding of the foam. So if you're going to get the texture, I'd say save yourself the trouble and just get the TNT foam, like the smooth both sides. Yeah, that's why they made it like that.
And the main thing too is that it's like where you want to put your work in. It's like you can save money. If you have a lot of time, then sure.
Yeah.
Take the time, grind, but if you don't, you want to build something very quickly, the idea that foam is smooth on both sides, it's such a great thing to have. Just to have it already, it's great, and therefore if anything shows, you know it's smooth, and you don't have to grind it and sand, because when you do sand, big one to talk about really quickly, when you're sanding, people, wear a mask. Dust, it goes everywhere. Also, you can try to grind outside. I have a little downdraft table I made where I plug the shop back into it, so when I grind, all the dust goes into the table. But wear a mask. These, the company that makes these Z Pros, I think it's called.
I'll drop a handle right there.
Yeah, right there, guys. This is great. They're neoprene. What makes them so wonderful is you get those paper masks. People don't wear them because they're uncomfortable, and they come to your face, so people have a tendency not to wear the mask when they're grinding.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Shame on you. Wear a mask. They're super comfortable. I put this guy on.
And look how aesthetic that looks.
So good to go, right? And it's comfortable, and sometimes I'm working, I'll forget that I have it on. That's how comfortable this thing is.
That's cool. I don't even use that, but then again, I don't sand.
Because he buys it. But when I'm doing rounding edges and things like that, that's when I do most of my sanding.
But that's really cool though. That's something like I didn't realize it looked like that. Mm-hmm. That's cool. So I'm probably gonna check that out and do like a review on that. Thank you for sharing that. Yep. So moving from the puzzle mats, we have the smooth foam.
Right.
You want to talk a little bit about the L200, just like a brief moment?
Yes, a long time ago when I started, when I worked in the movie industry, we used, I was a foam fabricator, but we used L200. And it was L200, the numbers meant density. So L200, L300, L400, the higher the number, the denser the foam was. But the one thing about it was, it's mostly used as a standard, most of the character costumes, you see it like events and sporting events and big silly
mascots.
Like, mascot characters. They make that out of that stuff because it's super durable. So I was building with that, but then again, the cosplay community making stuff, I saw the floor mat thing, and the cool thing about EVA foam is that you cannot do with L200. If you take a heat gun to it, it just gets melty and sticky and it'll melt. It doesn't shape, doesn't curl. You can take a piece of L200, heat it, bend it, let it go, and it just snaps right back.
Oh, it doesn't heat form.
No, it doesn't heat form. Okay. And you can take L200 and take an X-Acto blade cut it and put little grooves in it, hit with a heat gun, and it melts it back together. So that's why.
Okay.
If you're gonna get into that stuff's cool, but it's expensive. It's like for a 4x8 sheet, it's like $60 or $7, depending on the density you buy. And once I discovered EVA foam, I was like, what? This is cheap. So I started buying that to make costumes out of. So I was so happy that the cosplay community, because that was a Hollywood standard to get L200. So when I started cosplaying, I used L200. And as soon as I started discovering the floor mats, which I got that from Holly Conrad, Commander Holly. She had a costume and we're hanging out together working in my shop, and I said, this is really good foam, where'd you get it? She pointed to the floor mat on the floor and went, that stuff. I was like, mind blown. So no more L200. I went to get floor mats, and then sometime after I met TNT Cosplay Supply, and they just changed my life, so.
Yeah, so now you guys all know about TNT. I'll put a drop link in the description. And there's like a ton of, like we mentioned earlier, there's a ton of places you can get EVA foam now. I think Joanne's now sells it too.
I think Yaya Han.
She has that.
She dropped it. Boom, guys, look out. Yaya Han. I know Yaya for her patterns and her fabric. If you guys do not know this, Yaya Han has a great line of fabrics. The reason I'm not really into it is I'm not much of a sewer, but I was at at one of the stores and I saw her line of fabrics, and I kind of like, you know, from now on I'm gonna start looking at fabrics for my next cosplay costume, because the selection of things she has are just great, like quilted patterns and shimmering metals and sci-fi patterns and hexagons, like all
carbon fiber.
Yeah, carbon fiber. Look, all that stuff it's done. Like, you have to make it up. You just buy the fabric. So a big shout out to Yaya for providing the fabrics, and she just now dropped foam. And one thing that's cool about the foam at Yaya at Joanne's is that if you're on a project, most foam you get, you have to order it, and that's even with TNT order. But if you're in a pinch, it's kind of nice to know you can run down to the local store and grab.
Absolutely, that's the big benefit of having a Joanne's. It's a little bit more pricey.
Again, but guys, use the coupons. Don't get bent out of shape. It's more expensive, granted, but if you're in a rush, it's right there, and bring coupons.
Yep, you have the option of getting it now.
Right.
So yeah. So thanks for sharing the so that's just the basics of the material types of foam. So that answers is craft foam, EVA foam, and Pauldron mats the same. Yes, they are.
Got it.
Just different branding.
Branding quality.
What about cutting?
Cutting. Here we go, people. The secret to anything is a sharp blade. How do you have a sharp blade? You use a sharpener. So what I have here, this is Crenshaw, a company makes these blades. They're sharpeners. He'll have links for these below the video. And I use a box cutter. The cool thing about the box cutter is they're relatively inexpensive, and they come with multiple blades. And you can also, if the tip gets too worn out, you can always just snap it off with you'll see these little groove lines in them, kind of, sort of.
There it is.
There's
it's focusing on my face. Let's see.
That's all right. Fair enough. You guys get it. But you know what I'm talking about. They snap off. You can put new tips on them. But I've had this, and I've had the same blade for months. But people always ask me, when do you change the blade? I always change it when the project's done. Like if I start doing a new project, I reward myself with a new blade. So I put a new blade on and sharpen it. And I like to lube the sharpener with WD-40. It's just helps wet the blade and get a nice polish on it. But these things are great. And periodically when you're doing this, take some WD-40 and a paper towel and periodically clean it, because this thing will get clogged up with metal dust from you grinding. So just periodically lube it up, take a paper towel and wipe all the little black stuff off and make it finish.
I didn't even know that came up. My sharpener needs to get cleaned up.
Clean up. Just squirt a little WD-40, clean up, and you'll see it change colors because clean up. But again, a sharp blade, and nothing dulls a blade sharper than soft foam. It's crazy.
Yeah, you want to know what's funny? When I first started working with EVA foam, my sister, we looked online, and on one of the forums, I forget what forum it was saying that use a heat knife. But that's not good.
Here's the thing with heat knives. Again, people always when I first started in the cosplay community in the world, people kept asking about the heat knife. Those questions kind of phased away. I think people caught on to, it's like, don't fix what's not broken. Like a sharp blade cuts foam beautifully, a heat knife melts it. And also, when you're cutting something with a hot knife, two things are happening. Toxic fumes are coming off, and you're actually melting some of the project. And so if you cut something, you have to control the speed. So you have a knife, a hot knife, and you're cutting something, whatever you're cutting, make sure you pick a speed. That if you slow down or go to turn a corner, it starts to burn. So if you slow down, it burns more because you're slowing down. So it's like a hot branding iron. If you go really quickly, it makes a small hole. If you hold it longer, it makes a bigger hole. So that whole control of speed, and after a while, I'm like, why confuse yourself? Just get a sharp knife and go and be done.
Yeah, so there you guys go. I think heat knife, I think we can put it in the past. Now we've moved on.
Yeah, heat knife's great for detail. Don't get me wrong. I love the wood burner. I love the hot blade. I like doing it for adding detail to my foam. If I want to do nicks and scratches or dings in metal armor, like make it look like it's metal, I'll take heat to it. I made a knife, a crisp knife from Dune, and I shaped up with a rotary tool, and 90% of the detail was with a heat tool. I just made little dents with it, and that's what it's great for. But for cutting foam, just stick with a sharp blade.
Yeah, and I think that's where most of us will start off, and it's a lot cheaper than a heat knife. Yeah. So that's cutting. You want to go into sealing foam?
Sealing foam, this is great. A lot of people call it priming. I call it sealing. Some people call it priming. That is the key element to what blows people away about cosplay. Non-makers and family and friends come to my house like, oh my God, it's amazing. Whoa. And once they pick it up, like, oh, it's foam. And what makes that magic happen is that the foam doesn't look like foam. How is that possible? Is what you seal it with. Once you seal the foam and you put paint on it, it doesn't look like foam anymore. So I like to seal my foam. I use two elements. I use a creature cast, which is a liquid neoprene I buy from my friend in Portland. He makes it himself, but it's liquid neoprene rubber and it's non-toxic. So you can work on it on a kitchen table in your house, and there's no toxic fumes or anything like that. And you can brush it, but you also can spray. And I love using the critter gun. But if you spray, you need a compressor. And they sell those at Harbor Freight, but the compressor needs to be at least 25 to 30 PSI, pounds per square inch, when you spray. Wear a mask, spray outdoors, but that's why you get that nice smooth finish. And the other one is, I think, Our Natural. I keep changing the name. It's a rubber, Our Natural 60, I think it is. It comes in a paste. It comes in a little tub and a paste, and when you crack it open, you can thin it down with distilled water. Same thing, use a spray gun, spray it. Okay. Punish Prompts made a great video called Sealing Foam, Priming Foam, and they covered everything from time, materials, and expense. Like they cover every aspect of it. And everything from inexpensive to medium expensive to Plastidip to Mod Podge to, and then even the stuff, all that stuff, all the stuff I like. And if you're starting with a cosplay and you're a little intimidated, you don't have to use the expensive stuff I use. You can use simple stuff like the Mod Podge is amazing, and the Plastidip. Plastidip. The only thing with Plastidip, my downside of that stuff is that it does wrinkle and crease a little bit. But again, my two things are creature cast. I'm sorry, I need to. Lorentz brings this up. It's great because I need to do a video on those two things I like so much. People ask me all the time what I seal my foam with. I thought, that needs to be a video. So I'm working on it.
So look forward to that, guys.
Yeah, so I'm working on it. But the thing is, there's two reasons why I like two different elements. Because creature cast, when it dries, is semi-rigid. It's flexible, but it's really rigid when it dries. You can get different rigidities. He has semi-rigid, really rigid, or super flexible. But I bought semi-rigid, so I do all my props. So every gun or prop or weapon I make, or a backpack or a helmet or something, I use creature cast. But if I know I'm gonna do body armor on a suit and have a lot of flexing in it, I use rubber. So that's what depicts what I'm gonna seal it with. If I'm making a costume, I know it's gonna get a lot of wear and tear. All that stuff's gonna be rubber coated. All the props will be creature cast.
That's good advice. So that's something you guys have to consider. So what you're making, are you making an armor or are you making a prop? You need rigidity or flexibility. Right. So that's something you guys consider. So thanks for sharing that. I didn't know that. Yeah. So for me, I go really basic. I haven't gone to that level yet, but I'm using Plastidip. So Plastidip does wrinkle and all that stuff, but I use it because it's convenient.
Right.
It's
and it goes on quick. Yeah, it's super fast and it's easy to get.
But I'm gonna try that creature cast.
Definitely, yeah, and it's readily available. One thing that's cool about crafting, and that Lorentz I like, is that everything we do, you guys can get at a local hardware store or a hobby shop. It's like you don't need special effects stuff. I came from this industry where everything was like thousands of dollars in silicones and materials, and it's so great that you can make a Hollywood style prop for a fraction of budget by using anything at any hardware store. Readily available.
Hacks, guys.
And if you don't have it, again, necessity is the mother of invention. If you don't have stuff in your store, trust me, there's things out there you can find. I have people in different countries like, oh, I don't have this. What can I use? I'm like, whatever you can find. There's some people in Thailand that made this amazing costume out of rubber floor mats. Just like they don't have the foam mats, they have rubber floor mats. It's like using whatever you can get your hands on. Amazing.
That's really cool. And I think that's gonna wrap it up with the basics on what we're talking about. And then we're gonna get into the cool stuff. We're gonna go into the Q&A right now. So that's the questions you guys asked.
Yes.
So
let's do it.
We're gonna pick up some of those questions. So first question, let's say it goes, how do you make big foam props sturdy?
That's a good one. I've made a blade. I made a sword for a friend. I used a fiberglass rod. You can find those usually at Home Depot, hardware stores. I also had a friend who was throwing out a bunch of arrows, bows and arrows, like those fiberglass hunting arrows. They're really nice. I used those fiberglass rods from the arrows. Just took the arrowheads off, the tail ends, took the feathers off and used that. But for some big prop, PVC pipes.
Oh.
PVC pipes are great to use for staffs, weapons, giant blades. Your character with the giant
Big sword, the Buster sword.
With the claymore, right?
It was Cloud, Buster sword.
Buster Sword Cloud has a big blade. What did you do to the center for that? What was in there?
Oh, that wasn't out of foam. That was out of wood.
Oh, that was what?
No, but I made it hollow though. I made it hollow.
I made it hollow.
Yeah.
I've seen people do that at cons, and they do it on EVA foam, but the rigidity of it is a PVC pipe. Now people say, "Well, Ted, a PVC pipe flexes." And I said, "It does. Once you sandwich foam around it, it won't flex." Because PVC pipe by itself is a tube, and if you grab one end and the other, you bend it like this, it'll flex. When you have a trench and you collapse foam around it, it'll keep the rigidity, so when the blade's long and it wiggles, it's not gonna flex because it's surrounded by foam. Foam is part of the rigidity to the actual prop, but you have giant weapons, giant blades. If you look at a lot of Lightning cosplay, she's based out of Germany, and she built this giant monster thing from Monster Hunter. This giant blade thing is huge, and again, core is a PVC pipe. She's got, you pick up the density, what size you want to do, and that's the end. So that's PVC pipe.
Yeah, so I've seen a lot of people do that. That's really cool. And then just to go add on to what you said, so if you go to Home Depot, there's 2 different densities of PVC pipes.
Yes, there is.
So if you go with the denser one, that's probably better. It's just more rigid, especially, and it depends on how big of a prop you're going for.
Right.
So,
Yeah, ridiculously big, but anyway, just gauge your pipe.
yeah.
Great question.
So the next question we're gonna go into is like, what kind of paint / primer do you use for a foam build?
All right, again, everybody, I love acrylic paint. Acrylic paint is not the acrylic paint that I grew up as a kid in the 70s and 80s. Acrylic paint was crap. It came in a tube and it took like 20 coats. Like you get black and you put it on there, it was like semi-transparent. Paints have changed so much now and they keep coming out new. There's Cratex is amazing. Nova Color is one of the guys I like to use. So it's Cratex, Nova Color, and the acrylic pigment is so strong. I like applying it with airbrush. I like using sometimes just a brush on the different colors. Now, once you seal your foam with whatever you use, like Lorentz was saying, he likes Plastidip, whatever you use, once it's sealed, acrylic paint sticks pretty well to it by itself because everything's all acrylic based. So acrylic paint sticks really well. Once it's done and you painted, I like to use acrylic clear coats. And a Krumbacher, I think is the name of the brand. You can get acrylic paints. I have them on my site too. You can get gloss and you can get matte finish, and it's acrylic base. And it's made for painting for sealing canvases, but it's great for cosplay. It's great for sealing costumes, and that one works really well. And the Rust-Oleum 2X is a brand of paint that's designed for plastic that Rust-Oleum makes, and it's designed for plastic. So when you spray it on your foam prop stuff, it dries and it has a little bit of flex to it. But the ultimate, which I'll warn you guys, it's expensive and it's worth the investment. If you have bright colored characters, like a Power Ranger or something yellow or orange based characters, Montana is a brand.
Montana Gold?
Yeah, Montana Gold,
yeah.
Montana Colors, Montana Reds, Blues, Golds, Silvers. It is an acrylic based aerosol paint in a can. So it's acrylic paint in an aerosol can, so you can spray it and it comes out beautifully. Granted, you gotta let it dry. People do like crazy things. If you paint something, don't touch it for a day. If you're doing like chrome or gold, spray it on there and put that aside. Don't touch it because it stays wet for a long time because it comes out so thick. But once it dries, it's flexible and it's acrylic paint in a can. And but you'll see when you start shopping for them, they're expensive, but they're definitely worth the investment.
But I've used some Montana Gold, and they're amazing because their color choice is different from the Home Depot selection Lowe's.
And it's enamel based too, so when something flexible, it'll crack off.
It's enamel based?
No. I'm saying Home Depot stuff.
Oh yeah.
The Home Depot stuff that you buy, that's not acrylic, it's enamel. So when it sprays and dries, it'll flake off.
Yeah.
Where Montana will not.
Yeah. So just like to go off what Ivitel was saying, enamel and acrylic, they're different because enamel's oil based, right? And then it cracks.
And yeah, when it'll be cool for a day or two because it's still drying. But over time, when it dries, it gets rigid because it's meant to be put on something solid. So it flexes, it cracks.
Yeah. So the Montana Gold is acrylic. It's a little bit more expensive, but it saves your prop in the long run. So it's worth it, and there's a good selection of it. What do you call it? I was gonna say, Montana Gold.
Yeah, Montana Gold, the gold, the silver, the chromes, and also all their solid colors. Just because the paint was originally created for
Graffiti art.
Graffiti artists. So the pigment is so strong that you put they'll put up, they'll just go, and it's like bright red gold. It just comes out solid. Yellows and reds are always somewhat transparent. It's a hard color to have, but that pigment in those paints, it just comes out one coat, you're done. It's just like, yeah, it's solid.
Yeah, and don't get confused. It says Montana Gold, but that doesn't mean you're buying gold paint.
Right. It's, it's different brand. Montana has a different line of each different brand. It's really confusing. I know. I need to start organizing it and put it on my site because people are like, which gold am I? I'm like, oh, I know it's confusing.
Yeah. So definitely check that out. That's cool. Thanks. Oh, and I wanted to add for dry finishes. So something I've learned is like the chrome, the metallic finishes, those take longer to dry than the flat colors, right?
Right.
Just because the sheen, the finish, it just stays wet. In my opinion, it just stays wet longer.
Right, it does.
So don't come in after a day and like touch it because I've had cases fingerprints.
You'll leave a fingerprint. You'll be so mad you touched it.
Because you wanted that nice, yeah. So that's just a heads up. Thanks. Did you want to add anything else?
No, it's good. This is good.
The next question we're gonna do is how to make patterns for complicated armor pieces like detailed pauldrons. So I learned this from Evil Ted, so I'll let Evil Ted take this.
The concept of something, it's like you're trying to make something that doesn't exist. I used to find pre-existing objects around the house. Like if there's a shoulder piece or something I want, and I finally realized after a while, like I would try to freeform it. I have friends who are fantastic fabricators. Ted Haynes is amazing, Fred Furley. These guys have done patterns so much that they can take a piece of paper, lay it down and draw a curve, cut it out, trace it on foam, glue, boop, and makes this amazing. I'm like, what? They do it by sight. I'm like, oh, I just want to choke them. But that's how good they are. They've been doing it for so long, they can kind of see the pattern. They've made so many patterns, they can kind of see where the curved lines work. So what I end up doing, because I can't do that, I go out and I buy the insulation foam. You can get it most like the orange foam or whatnot. You stack something up, and what I've done is I take a piece of foam and I'll stack it, and I'll carve and sand up and shape something. And I'll get so lazy, I only do one side. Like if I'm gonna make a shoulder armor, I'll take a piece of foam and carve and shape and just make one half of the shoulder curve I want, cover it with foil and duct tape, make my cut lines, take it, flip it, make a pattern, and put it together and see how it comes together. And what you're basically doing is you're reproducing what you sculpted, but you're making a pattern in that. So if you have a complication or like a pattern you see that you want to make that you can't see, for a lot of video games, guys, I guarantee you can probably find a Pepakura pattern of it.
Yep.
Buy the Pepakura pattern, cut it all out, tape it together, and then cut it apart in bigger pieces and lay those on foam. That's a big one. I've seen people like Kamui does that a lot.
Yeah. I'll leave a link in what Pepakura is. Pepakura is like an origami digital file, but I'll leave a link in there and you guys can check that out. But going off that, that's like that's when they take 3D models and they just like flatten it out.
They flatten it out, and it's like, and you can take it. And granted, most of them are designed for paper, so that there's so many darts you don't need a third of those. So that's why when you take if you watch Kamui and her patterns, she'll take patterns and then Benny and her husband will put it all together, give it to her, she'll cut it and say, I only need to be this big, and she'll roll it onto a foam and trace it and make a pattern from that. And that's all comes from experience. You'll know how far you can get away with, how many darts you don't really need. So, but again, this is, the only way is, guys, you gotta do it.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid.
So pattern making is, I would categorize that more as an advanced tool because you have to learn how this works first.
How far the curve's gonna go.
Yeah.
Like I can make this cut line here because I know the foam's gonna go this far. And that just comes from experience. But again, the best way to do it is stick to it. And if you guys patterns, we have patterns in our stores.
And check them out.
Get them started, check them out too. We have patterns, buy them.
Yeah, so from the patterns, if you check out the patterns, you can learn like, oh, this curve makes that.
Exactly. That's one thing I do in my patterns. I want people, if they buy a pattern, make it, you get the gist of how far you can go with something. Like, oh, wait a minute. Oh, I get it now. Once you build a foam helmet, you're like, oh, you see the possibilities, what you can do.
Oh, this one's really good. How do you attach foam armor pieces to a piece of clothing?
That's good.
So a lot of us, we build really cool stuff, but then we go to a con and we're like, how do we wear this? So we'll answer this question. So this question is like, how do you attach foam armor pieces to a piece of clothing or basically wear the armor?
That's a great question. When you have a fabric suit or a bodysuit of a character you're wearing, but you want armor to sit on, now there's no, usually with armor, like if you have a chest piece, you have a strap on the chest piece that floats the shoulder piece to that. That's what you usually do. But if you guys have something kind of super cool or stealthy and you just want to have a shoulder piece or a forearm piece and just want something to sit on the suit, I've always found Velcros and snaps. The trick to Velcro is if you want to make sure that whatever you're putting in your fabric suit, you're going to be able to wash your fabric suit. So if you're going to sew any Velcro onto your fabric suit, make sure you put the soft side on the spandex suit or bodysuit you're using, not the hook side.
That's a good tip.
Because what happens with the hook side, if you take that hook side on there and you put it in a wash, the hooks will grab the fabric and destroy it and shred it. So what I've done is that you always make a fabric suit, make sure you use the soft side first and then have the hook side on the foam armor you stick on. The Velcro, don't get me wrong, Velcro's cool and I think it's in proper places, but if you're gonna have shoulders and armor pieces or thigh pieces, use snaps. Snaps are awesome because snaps don't travel, they don't move. And if you're going to put a snap onto your spandex suit, what I recommend is take a piece of webbing, or strapping, like 1-inch strapping, cut a piece of strapping, sew your snap to the strap fabric really well, and then sew the fabric part, sew that onto your spandex suit. If you put a snap onto a spandex suit and your foam part's on there, it's gonna pull and tug and move around, and it might start tearing the spandex over time. So to prevent that from happening, make sure you take that snap, put it on onto some webbing and sew it on there first, and then sew that on too. That's
a good tip. That's a really good tip. And then thanks for sharing the Velcro too. I didn't even think about that. Like the, what do you call it?
The hook side. The reason you only have some great wisdom is I did the opposite. One time I had some spandex suit and I just stuck some hook side to it. And as I was taking it off, the hook side was catching onto the spandex and it started ripping. I realized, and by that time I stopped immediately and took it all off and had to redo it. I flipped everything around because I realized at that point, if I wash it and tumbles in a washing machine,
it's over.
It's gonna destroy it, yeah.
Okay, so that's really cool. So thanks for sharing that. Something that I wanna add on to that is I use magnets.
Ooh, magnets are cool.
So magnets are really cool because you can start, what I like to do is sometimes you need an armor piece to be adjustable just because of the way your body moves. So I put magnets on and that allows it to kind of move within a certain range. Given that the magnets do pop off sometimes, but you can just like easily pop them back on. So what I do, a combination of Velcro and magnets.
Right, and also too for your magnets people, I've discovered Goop, the sole shoe adhesive, Goop too. You put, yeah. I rough up my magnet and put the magnets in with Goop. You wait for 24 hours and that magnet's never ever coming off.
Okay, thanks for answering, because that was the hardest thing, because
people super glue, use super glue. What happens is super glue's stiff and it's rigid, and if it gets bumped or pulled or snapped, it just snaps right off, and next thing you know your magnet comes clean off. So whenever it does that, just take that same spot, instead of using super glue, just put a little Goop on it, wait 24 hours, that magnet's not coming out.
See, I'm learning from this video. Thanks.
All right, next.
All right, let's see what we can do. Okay, so the next question we'll do is how do best techniques, tools to use to cut circular shapes or round edges?
Rounded edges, it's a bandsaw. I have a bandsaw, it's a great tool to have. Sometimes if there's smaller curves, I just cut it and take a rotary tool and just round it off. Like I'll draw a circle line on the edge of something. Now if you're doing armor or a shoulder piece or some gauntlets and you have something that you want the edge to be rounded, it's easy just to trace it and then cut it and then go over the rotary tool to round it. And then for bigger curves, for like more curvy things, there's the scroll saw and the band saw, but Cos tool and cutting circles, that Cos tool cutter, have you seen that thing?
It's like Foamworks, right?
Yeah, Foamworks makes it, and Foamworks changed the name to Cos tools just to confuse you.
To appeal to the cosplay community.
Yes, but still Foamworks. So Foamworks changed their name to Cos tools, and they have a circle cutter, and out of all the tools I got from them, that is the one I use the most. And it's amazing. You just put a blade in, drop it, bam, it's a perfect clean circle. Because I can't tell how many times I've tried to cut circles on a bandsaw and try to make them decent, and it takes so long, and then when I do, I have to go back and look at it with a rotary tool to clean up the edge. So for big circles, like this circles and medium circles, small circles, you can't beat the Cos tool cutter.
That's cool. I haven't used that yet.
Oh, I got it. We'll pull it out and show it to you.
Okay, yeah.
It's awesome.
You have that on your video, right?
Yes, I do. I have a video, a Cos tool review.
I'll pop a card right here somewhere.
Cos tool video review. Check it out.
Yep. And I learned from Bill Duran, brass rods.
Yes, brass rods cutting
for smaller circles.
Right, and I have a collection of various brass tubes, and they're great for just cutting. Like if you have like small circular rivets, I sharpen them. I periodically take a razor. I have like a bunch of X-Acto knives. I have one cheap one. I just have a blade, it's dull as hell, but I just use it to cut. I trim the inside of the brass tube to sharpen it. and they're just great. They're great things to have, so you have different variety of circles you can cut.
There you go. So like brass rods for smaller circles, that circular.
Oh yeah, the circle cutter, yeah, it's for bigger circles.
Like shields or like something
yeah,
else. Right?
And it's most it goes. I think the biggest it goes is like almost about 3 inches, so it's like 6 inches. Yeah, make a big circle. But for bigger things, probably a bandsaw, just kind of turn it.
So yeah, he has a bandsaw video. I just remember that tools. So that's probably not a lot of you guys would probably end up getting a bandsaw just because it takes space and it's a little bit more expensive. But if you do have a bandsaw, definitely check that out, and it's a tool worth investing. I have one. It's great for a lot of things. So I think we're done with the circular. We want to do like maybe 3 more questions?
Yeah, let's do 3.
So we're going from circular, we're gonna go to this other question saying, how do you know what thickness of foam to use? That's a good question.
That is a good question. I find that when I do make a helmet, when you make helmets and stuff, it's usually like, it's always ½ inch, like ½ inch or 10 millimeter foam for helmets and armor. Majority of the armor is always either ½ inch or 10 millimeter foam, because I find that thickness makes a good rigidity. But if you're doing something that's really streamlined or tailored or low profile, then use thinner foam. Like a lot of the superhero suits, like Batman, like you see these guys doing Batman armor and stuff like that, and they want it to be super cool and low profile. That stuff is great, like with 6 mil, 4 mil, and the cool with 6 mil is that you can use your base and you can put thinner pieces of foam on top of it for detail, but it's more low profile and looks less bulky. But again, it all depends on what you're making. So you just kind of ask yourself, like, what do you want the rigidity or how big something is going to be? But for armor overall, I use ½ inch to 10 millimeter for armor.
Okay, so there you guys have it. Also, there's different densities too.
That is true, and I like the denser the end. That's why a lot TNT foam I find to me is dense, and the density to me always changes because people always like, oh, how do you know? I want to do something really dense. I'm like, well, the density comes once you seal it. People always get foam and go, this is too soft for what I want to do. I'm like, well, once you make the foam, something's flat and flimsy. Once you put it in a circular pattern or a dome-like pattern, it becomes more rigidity. It's like structural support. And then on top of that, once you seal it, it becomes stiffer. So by the time you sealed it, Plastidip, painted it, coated it, it's already stiff. So the rigidity of foams is never that important to me. I find that TNT's rigidity is just perfect for me, so that's why I always just stick with that.
I want to add on to the rigidity. So I think TNT sells, I think their foam is standard 38 density.
Right.
And then they do sell
denser, they do
70.
Yeah, they do.
And I love that for belts.
Belts?
They're thin, but they're dense. So they won't pull apart like their standard 2 millimeter.
You're right, if it's standard foam, it'll rip, definitely.
So if the thinner you get, it depends on what you're going for. Again, if you're going for straps and you want to make it low profile, go with a higher density. Also, if you're making a prop like a sword, I go with higher density just because I don't want it to be flimsy.
Right.
But if you're going for armor, you want flexibility, then you go something a little lighter. And therefore, like thickness and density are a little different. They're different. Okay. So hopefully that answers that question. We talked about contact cement earlier, but this person specifically asked, what is contact cement and why is it used with EVA foam?
Contact cement is I use barge cement. It's an industry standard in the movie industry for costumes because it's super strong. It's designed for leather. Barge cement was originally contact to put soles of shoes on, like leather soles to rubber pads. And they would brush it on there really thin, dry, and they would glue it down, and then they would go back in with a sewing machine and sew the edge. But the rigidity of it was to put things in place, and that was super strong. And leather workers use it all the time too, so that's what we used. Hot glue is great, and when you guys are starting off with crafting, a majority of stuff you can do with a hot glue, especially high temp hot glue is great. But I find when you're just putting overall foam pieces and you want to get a nice, most people want a really good, strong, clean seam. It's hard to beat contact adhesive. And I use barge, but if you can't get barge, you can use Wellwood, Lepage. There's in different countries. There's in Australia it's called Sika. But all different brands of contact cements in different countries. And just use contact adhesive, and then when you apply it and put your foam together, it's a nice clean seam, because when you're using hot glue, sometimes the seams don't look that good. They don't close because the hot glue only goes so far. So that's why I use contact cement. Yeah, contact cement is, so barge cement, if you're living in California, you have to ship it in. They don't sell it. They used to, and now it's, the ocean's cracked down. So yeah, you can ship it in, and I know like that's really cool that you covered like an international base, because a lot of people have
hey, I live in this part of the country or this part of the world.
And also ask local cosplayers. If you're new to this and you don't know what they're using, don't ask us. Ask a cosplayer in your country, in Australia or New Zealand or Thailand. This kid that wrote to me in Thailand, I said, oh my God, do you have cosplayers in Thailand? He said, yes. I said, ask them what they're using. It's like, I'm not out there. So I love people look up to me, but it's like in different countries, reach out to your community, you know?
Yeah. So thanks. That's good advice. Yeah, absolutely. Reach out, make friends and just talk. So, what do you call it? I was gonna say going off contact cement, when you're putting the two foams together, and going off the last question with density, what I found was the less dense the foam is, the more likely it is to, it's easier to heat form.
Right.
So the more dense it is, the more likely it will pop back into place.
Yes.
So if you want to make a helmet, I would go with a less dense foam, because it's less likely to force its way back up.
And what I do though with the dense foam is that once you glue it all together, you let it dry for 45 minutes to an hour and you heat the foam up. And what that does, it takes the fight out of the foam.
Oh, so once you have a video on that too.
Yeah, I do. Once you put that helmet together and it's all done together, ta-da, you're like, great. And if you hit the heat gun too soon, barge will come apart with the heat. So you gotta let the contact cement dry for at least about an hour. And then you go back in with a heat gun and you heat everything back up, and it makes the foam relax and take the fight out of it. And it takes more of a natural shape.
Let's go. Will's gonna do one last one, and then we're gonna wrap it up, and then we're gonna, since they asked us a question, I want you to ask them a question just to finish everything out.
You got it. Okay.
Okay, so let's do, we're gonna wrap this up with this last question. It's detailing tips. Something like our fancy tools like Cricut, as good as they're advertised. So I'll do the Cricut.
Do the Cricut.
So Cricut it's marketed primarily for fabric and paper crafts,
right?
But it does have an option to cut foam. And to my surprise, I've used it. It's been my saving grace this one time when I was away from my shop and I only had space to take one tool with me, and I took the Cricut and I made all of my Link Breath of the Wild cosplay from it. I made my Sheikah slate because you can cut 2mm foam on the Cricut and it just cuts it out.
Wow.
But the drawback is you need to know how to make patterns into vectors.
Right. Okay.
So that's a little bit more advanced. So Cricut, in my opinion, for filigree details, they're really good.
Yeah. For me, again, the detail is something. There's two ways of it. You can either go back in with 2mm foam. Once you make your pattern, making other patterns on top of that, but cutting with a good X-Acto knife and just cutting out your 2mm patterns. But most of my detail is just stacking foam. And the other trick too is taking an X-Acto blade or having a shape and cutting it all the way through the foam and just pushing the foam, recessing it in. Like some people like, oh, you just cut, but sometimes I just want to have a space shoulder or something, and I want a little bit of a recess, but I don't want 1/2 inch recess. I just want a recess. So what I do is you cut the actual part all the way through, pull it out, and I put kind of adhesive on the edge, slide it back in and reach the depth that I like about a 1/4 or 1/16 of an inch, let it dry, and then boom, there's your detail. So adding detail without killing yourself by just cutting the actual piece itself and just pushing the foam in a little bit. That one, and then of course just wood burning, taking a wood tool with a wood burning bit and just taking a straight edge and doing lines. That's the way most of the detail work.
Yeah, you use a knife to score and stuff too,
yes,
right?
I use a knife to score. I score, heat shrink. The only thing with heat thing is I like doing it mostly for props, because costumes, when you start scoring lines and heat shrinking, it gets kind of lost because it's so big. People see your costumes and don't see the detail. So most of my lines, I go big. I just use wood burners and make the lines a bit more pronounced. It's kind of like a painting or a drawing. The bigger it is, the further back away you can see it.
That makes sense.
You make something so detailed, it's like if you're making it for a movie prop or something close up for a film, that's understandable. But when you're making something for a costume for a con and people are going to see you mostly at that distance, I try to go big with the detail.
That's a good tip. Okay. Yeah. I'll definitely do that because I definitely go in with all the details like that. But yeah, I think what do you call it? Have you ever used the heat guns, like the tip of the heat gun, to like just do a burnt on the foam?
No, I haven't done that because I'm afraid it'll just keep stinking when I use it again.
Okay.
But I use mostly a wood burner. I like using different tools and wood burners and scoring things up. But no, I've never actually used the heat gun, which is very funny. But no, I've not done it.
Because I've actually, that was on accident, and I was like, hey, this detail looks really cool. But actually, so that's all the questions. There's a lot. We didn't answer all of them. We just went over the more general.
The basic stuff that we thought we wanted to cover.
Yeah, so thank you guys for asking your questions. If you guys have any more, ask them down below.
Fantastic.
But since you guys asked us a question and we have Evil Ted here, Evil Ted, you want to ask some of them like a question for the audience?
A question for them. A question for the audience. You know, I don't know so much of a question that I want to let you guys know that when starting out, having the ability to know something's not right is half of it. When you're building something and you make something, and what makes people usually give up and quit is that they make it and they look at stuff like they look at Lorentz, look at me and like all these cosplayers and they see these amazing parts, and when you make your part, it doesn't look like ours. You see there's a sense of defeat, and it's not, because the idea that you can see it and say, wait a minute, that's not as good as it could be. That's the first step. That's the big step. That's when you know you have the ability to be a better person, because you can see it. Some people can build stuff that looks bad and go, that looks good. That's good enough for me. And they're good with it. And they walk around and wear it and they settle for good. But you don't. You build something and you see that it's not right. That's the path toward great. So when you build something or start up and you're intimidated and you build something that doesn't look great, don't worry about it, because the next one will be better. And then the one after that will be even better. And the one after that will be even better. That is the key.
Okay, and that's why I love this guy. That positivity. Thanks for leaving it on a good note.
You're so welcome.
Thanks, Ted. All right.
Guys, thank you so much. And Lawrence, thank you for having me on the show.
Of course, of course.
Ooh, we got to do this again.
All right, absolutely. All right, and guys, I'll drop his hand right here. Give him some love.
EvilTedSmith.com. And don't forget to go to my, I do stream on Twitch. Slow down a little bit for me, but I'm coming back. I stream on twitch.tv/EvilTedSmith Mondays and Tuesdays. Check it out.
Cool. All right, guys. Thanks, guys. We'll see you guys in the next one. All right, bye.